I play a power forward position, but I have small forward moves. I have the strength of a power forward, but I play outside like a small forward. I run the court like a small forward. I dribble like a small forward. My thinking is as a small forward.
He said it best. Terry Cummings was a hybrid forward who could do it all on the offensive end, whether it was taking his man off the dribble and slashing to the hoop or getting it going from mid-range. He had a finesse game when he wanted to, but could also play like a more traditional big man, going to work down low and battling on the glass for putbacks. He was one of the most consistent players of all time, dating back to his days at DePaul alongside Mark Aguirre. He began his career on a dysfunctional San Diego Clippers team, but quickly became a star for the franchise. He was traded to Milwaukee early in his career, where he would flourish, alongside Sidney, Moncrief, and Pressey, as the Bucks became contenders for a brief period in the mid-80s. He would spend the tail end of his prime years as a great veteran alongside a young David Robinson on the San Antonio Spurs. But a severe knee injury in 1992 would completely alter his career. But he would respond by making a seamless transition to a bench role for the second half of his career. Even though he didn't draw attention to himself, Terry Cummings doesn't seem to get any recognition nowadays. Maybe it's due to playing in a small market like Milwaukee, or maybe it's being overshadowed by David Robinson's dominance in San Antonio. But whatever it is, Terry Cummings was one of the league's best forwards and best players for a decade in the 80s and 90s. Yet you never hear about him. Until now. Let's jog your memory. A Chicago native, Terry Cummings began as a hockey and baseball player. But after an 8-inch growth spurt during the summer going into his 10th grade year, he would start focusing on basketball. And it was also around this time that he would become an ordained minister to help him escape his environment. Cummings would begin at Harlan High School, but transfer to Carver High School after his growth spurt, where he would spend his sophomore year warming the bench, yet learning a lot about patience. And later that summer in a Pro-Am league, he would prove himself against some established players. Going into his junior season, Cummings would say it was his team, and he would average about 23 points and 16 rebounds per game. And then after a great senior year, he would take visits to schools like UNLV and Iowa, before ultimately deciding to stay home and attend local DePaul to play under legendary coach Ray Meyer. So Cummings was a great pickup for DePaul, but they already had their star in sophomore forward Mark Aguirre, who had led the team to a Final Four appearance in the previous season. And as Cummings recalls, Meyer would pull him aside and tell him that no matter how good he plays, Aguirre would be the man on the team, as Cummings again had to wait his turn. The Blue Demons also featured a great guard tandem in Skip Dillard and Clyde Bradshaw. So Aguirre was clearly the man, but a freshman Cummings quickly became the second option for a top 10 offense in the nation. Cummings would appear in every game while finishing as the team's leading rebounder and second leading scorer on nearly 51% shooting. And the Blue Demons were a powerhouse, as they would begin the regular season on an incredible 25-game win streak, which was ended by Notre Dame in the second last game of the season, when they pulled off a 2-point victory in double overtime. DePaul would finish the season with an easy defeat of Illinois State, as they would end the year with a 26-1 record and the #1 ranking in the nation, as they looked primed to win it all. But that's not what would happen. To start their tourney, the Blue Demons would take on #8 UCLA in the second round, who were led by Kiki Vandeweghe, and the Bruins starters couldn't miss, as all 5 members shot at least 50%. But this wouldn't be the case for DePaul, as the team shot a combined 40.5%, with an especially forgettable performance from freshman Teddy Grubbs, going 1 for 10. Aguirre would have 19, but Cummings would pace the team with 23 points on over 56% shooting, while also pulling down 8 rebounds and blocking 5 shots. But when the game ended, DePaul was stunned, as they had lost by 6 points, ending their season much earlier than expected, as Cummings' freshman year had ended with him averaging about 14 points, 9.5 rebounds, and a block per game. Aguirre was back for the 81 season, and overall the Blue Demons were bringing back the exact core from last year, so they knew that they had the talent and were determined to redeem themselves after their early exit. DePaul played a little differently, as although they still featured a top 25 offense, they were scoring nearly 5 less points per game. And after allowing over 74 points per game last year, they would allow just 66 this year. So it was understandable that Cummings saw a minor hit to his numbers, yet he would again finish as the team's top rebounder and second leading scorer. And just like last year, DePaul came out on a mission, as they would win their first 13 games of the year, which included a blowout victory over UCLA. But then on January 10th, unranked Old Dominion would pull off a shocking upset, defeating the Blue Demons by 1 point at home. DePaul would get back on track the rest of the way, winning their final 14 games of the year to finish at 27-1, as they would end the regular season ranked number 2 in the nation and would again start their tournament in the second round, this time versus St. Joseph's. St. Joe's would employ their 4-to-score offense to help slow the pace down, and no one on DePaul was able to score more than 12 points, as Aguirre and Cummings were held to single-digit scoring, with Cummings especially struggling, putting up just 6 points on 3 of 10 shooting. And then in the closing seconds of the game, a missed free throw from Dillard gave St. Joe's a chance to win, and they would capitalize, hitting a game-winning layup as time expired to cap off one of the greatest upsets in NCAA tournament history. But for the season, Cummings had averaged about 13 points, 9 rebounds, and 1.5 blocks per game. Over the summer, Aguirre would leave for the NBA, meaning Cummings would finally be the man on the team, and he would play like it. As the number 1 option, Cummings would lead the team in scoring, rebounding, and blocks, while shooting nearly 57% from the field, as he would also lead the conference in scoring and finish 3rd in rebounding. And DePaul was still one of the nation's best teams, with a top 20 offense and a defense in the top half of the nation. They would begin the year at 5-0 before an embarrassing 12-point loss to UCLA, but after that they would run the table, winning their final 20 games of the regular season, and Cummings would fondly remember a December 26th game against Louisville, which he sees as his coming out party. A 7-point defeat of Louisville on national TV saw Cummings go for 37 points and 19 rebounds, and it was at this time he knew he needed to be a leader for the team. So once again, DePaul was ending the regular season ranked in the top 3 and one of the nation's hottest teams. And after 2 straight second-round exits, it was time for DePaul to get the monkey off their back. But it wouldn't happen this year, as once again the Blue Demons were upset in their first game of the tournament, this time by Boston College, as great games from John Bagley and Michael Adams pushed the Eagles through, as Cummings' 20 points and 17 rebounds wasn't enough in what ended up being his final college game. But his junior season had seen him average about 22.5 points, 12 rebounds, and 1.5 blocks per game. But like Aguirre did last year, Cummings would forego his final year of eligibility to enter the 1982 NBA draft as one of its most coveted prospects. 1982 had 3 great players at the top of the draft: UNC's James Worthy, Georgia's Dominique Wilkins, and then Cummings. And after Worthy was selected by the Lakers, the San Diego Clippers would choose Cummings over Wilkins, which was interesting as they had just selected a power forward in last year's draft in Tom Chambers, who was coming off a great rookie year. But luckily, Cummings and Chambers each had the ability to play both forward positions. Yet initially, it didn't look like Cummings would be in San Diego for long, as the Clippers held their training camp at a naval base and had the players do their own laundry, which contributed to Cummings seeking a 1-year contract so he could switch teams next season. But after sitting out the team's first 4 games, Cummings came to an agreement on a 4-year deal worth $1.7 million. Cummings and Chambers would quickly become the team's top 2 players, as the TC duo would be the team's top 2 scorers this season. The Clippers also featured Bill Walton, who had played a total of 14 games over the last 3 seasons for San Diego and missed the last 2 seasons completely. And while he would return this year, he would still only appear in 33 games. Cummings had come out on a tear, as in just his 3rd pro game versus Indiana, he went for 32 points and a career-high 24 rebounds, and continued to play well going into a December 15th game versus Utah. But then in the 3rd quarter, he would scare everyone when he fainted on the court, as the reason for this was initially said to be an iron deficiency. But later in the offseason, it would be diagnosed as an irregular heartbeat, which he would need to start taking medication for throughout his career. But Cummings was back for the next game, and overall appeared in 70 games this season. He would hit double figures in every game, while recording 42 double-doubles and 3 games with at least 20 rebounds, with arguably his best game coming in a March 9th loss to the Lakers, when Cummings had a season-high 39 points on over 58% shooting, along with 18 rebounds, with 10 of them coming on the offensive glass. And by season's end, Cummings had been named first-team All-Rookie and voted Rookie of the Year, and he would finish as one of only 4 players in the league to average at least 20 points and 10 rebounds per game. But still, Cummings was putting up big numbers on a bad team, as they featured a middle-of-the-pack offense and one of the worst defenses in the league, which led to them finishing at 25-57 and missing the playoffs, as Cummings' first year had seen him average a career-high 23.7 points, a career-high 10.6 rebounds, and a career-high 1.8 steals per game. San Diego had a new coach going into 1984, as they would go from Paul Silas to Jim Lynam. Walton would appear in 55 games and produce well, but was never going to be the same player he was in his Portland days. But they were missing one big piece. In August of 1983, the Clippers packaged Tom Chambers to the Seattle Supersonics for a package headlined by defensive big man James Donaldson, as although this gave the Clippers a clear direction at power forward and some added defense, it broke up a duo that could have developed into something great. Additionally, in a less talked about move, the Clippers traded their 4th overall pick in the 83 draft, a guard named Byron Scott, to the Lakers for veteran guard Norm Nixon, after San Diego refused to oblige to Scott's contract requests. And then the Clippers would flip a pick received in the Lakers trade for guard Ricky Pierce from Detroit. So the Clippers looked solid and played relatively well. Cummings reassumed his role as their #1 option, putting together another great season, acting as the team's leading scorer and a top 10 scorer in the league. He would appear in 81 games, hitting double figures in every one of them, and scoring at least 30 points in 12 of them, while recording 37 double-doubles. The Clippers improved to a top 10 offense, but still featured one of the league's worst defenses, as they saw a 5-win improvement on last year. But it still wasn't enough for a playoff berth, as Cummings' second year had seen him finish with averages of about 23 points, 9.5 rebounds, and a steal per game. But the Clippers' impatience would strike again this offseason. The Clippers were preparing for their first season in LA going into 1985, but Cummings wouldn't be joining them. In another shocking trade, they sent a package of Terry Cummings, Ricky Pierce, and Craig Hodges to the Bucks for a veteran package of Marcus Johnson, Junior Bridgman, and Harvey Catchings, a trade that the Clippers almost decided against due to age and salary differences. But I'll quickly pop up a post-trade production comparison courtesy of Curtis Harris on Pro Hoops History, and you can decide who won the trade. But Clippers owner Donald Sterling made it clear back in 1981 that he didn't have any patience. Additionally, this wasn't the first trade that Cummings was included in, as reportedly in late June, a deal was all but complete, which would have seen Cummings sent to Philadelphia for Julius Erving. But Erving had final say and vetoed the trade. However, Cummings was still moving on to a much better situation in Milwaukee. So Cummings joined a Bucks team who had become an Eastern Conference power in the 80s, and were coming off a conference finals appearance in 84, as they featured the great backcourt of Sidney Moncrief and Paul Pressey. They allowed the least points in the league in 84, but were one of the lowest scoring teams, and an offensive talent like Cummings was exactly what they needed. They would again allow the least points in 85, but would score over 5 more points per game. And having a great coach like Don Nelson helped Cummings immensely. As he would say in San Diego, he basically just relied on his talent and did whatever he wanted on the court and didn't have to learn anything. But Nelson was someone who could teach Cummings, and specifically wanted him to become a better two-way player for a Bucks team known for their defense. And Cummings would improve his defense, as his first year in Milwaukee would see him finish with a top 5 defensive rating. But he was no less of an offensive threat, as he again led the team in scoring and rebounding, while finishing as a top 10 scorer in the league for the 3rd straight season. Once again, Cummings would hit double figures in every game he played in, while also recording 33 double-doubles, as he would garner his first All-Star selection this season and go for 17 points and 7 rebounds in the game. And Cummings wasn't just an all-star, he was one of the most valuable players in the league, as he would finish 5th in MVP voting this season. And the trade paid dividends, as the Bucks won 59 games this season, as Cummings was set to make his first career playoff appearance, versus a Chicago Bulls team featuring a rookie Michael Jordan. The Bucks were the more complete team and played as such. In a 9-point Game 1 win, Cummings would go for 22 points on an efficient 10 of 16 shooting. Then he would follow that up with 30 points on 11 of 20 shooting, along with 11 rebounds in another win. A duel between Cummings and Jordan ensued in Game 3, as Jordan finished with 35 points, and Cummings finished with a game-high 37 on 75% shooting, along with 9 rebounds. Yet the Bulls would hold on to win by 2, but the Bucks would wrap up the series in Game 4, as Cummings finished with 29 points on 60% shooting, along with 12 rebounds. And even though it wasn't noteworthy at this time, Cummings had scored a total of 118 points in the series to lead all scorers, including Jordan, who had 117 points. Yet when their careers were all said and done, Cummings would remain as the only player to outscore Michael Jordan in a playoff series. But at this time, the Bucks were focused on their second-round matchup with Philly. Unfortunately, a veteran Philly team would defeat the Bucks in a 4-game sweep. Yet Cummings had continued his offensive dominance. again leading all scorers in the series and recording 2 double-doubles, which included a Game 2 performance which saw him go for a postseason career-high 41 points on 56% shooting along with 12 rebounds. But Cummings' regular season had seen him average about 23.5 points, 9 rebounds, and 1.5 steals per game. The Bucks had high hopes going into 1986 and were fielding one of the best teams in franchise history, as they would feature a top 5 scoring offense and defense. Cummings would play and start in all 82 games for the first and only time in his career. He would again finish top 10 in defensive rating, but for the first time in his career, he wouldn't lead the team in scoring. However, this was more so due to a breakout year from sixth-man Ricky Pierce. But Cummings still gave the Bucks great production, as he would hit double figures in 79 games and record 28 double-doubles. Milwaukee really hit their stride in February, as after starting the month with 2 straight losses, they would win the final 10 games of February. And when the regular season came to an end, they were 57-25 and gearing up for a first-round matchup with New Jersey. This would be an easy 3-game sweep for Milwaukee, as Cummings led the team with about 21.5 points and 8.5 rebounds per game, along with averaging over a block and a steal, setting up a rematch with the 76ers in what would be a much closer series. The team split the first 4 games, and Cummings had hit double figures in every game while recording 2 double-doubles, including a 30-point, 15-rebound performance in a Game 2 win. Milwaukee would win Game 5, but then lose Game 6 badly. But with their season on the line, Cummings came through with a game-high 27 on over 63% shooting, as the Bucks would outlast the Sixers to win by 1 and advance to a conference finals matchup with Boston. But this was the '86 Celtics, and no one was stopping them, as they would run through Milwaukee en route to a 4-game sweep. But it is worth mentioning that Moncrief had been struggling with a foot injury all postseason and missed Game 1. Cummings would put up over 18 points and 10 rebounds per night to lead the Bucks, but the Celtics made life difficult on him, as he would only shoot about 40% for the series and would be in foul trouble in the final 3 games. As Milwaukee's great season was over, with Cummings averaging about 20 points, 8.5 rebounds, and 1.5 steals per game. After such a great year, the Bucks look like they may have a championship in their future, but that all came crashing down with the sudden decline of Moncrief. He would deal with significant knee problems throughout the season, leading to him only appearing in 39 games. The Bucks still featured a top-scoring defense and an above-average offense, with Cummings turning in another season averaging over 20 to lead the team, and he shot above 50% for the second and final time of his career. Cummings would hit double figures in 78 games and record 29 double-doubles, while even recording his first career triple-double in a January 16th loss to Dallas, when he finished with 39 points, 15 rebounds, and 10 assists. The Bucks had brought in veteran center Jack Sikma before the season and signed veteran guard John Lucas to fill in for Moncrief, as these acquisitions helped keep them competitive, and it was enough to get them another 50-win season, as their 50-32 record would get them a first-round matchup with a familiar foe in the Sixers. Cummings would come off the bench in the first 2 games before starting the remaining 3 in a series that went the distance. Although he would score 21 points off the bench in each of the first 2 games, he would shoot a combined 18 for 43, as the team split the 2. Over the next 2, Cummings would average 27.5 points on nearly 63% shooting. He would only drop 10 points in Game 5, but the rest of the team picked up the slack to win and advance to a second-round matchup with Boston, in a series that went much different from last year. Cummings came out strong, dropping an efficient 28 points in each of the first 2 games. Yet Milwaukee found themselves down 2-0. Milwaukee would win Game 3 as Cummings put up 17 and 12, but would fall behind 3-1, even though Cummings put up 31 and 11 on over 57% shooting in Game 4. But with their backs against the wall, Milwaukee went into Boston for Game 5 and handed the Celtics their first home loss since December 12th, snapping a 33-game home winning streak, as Cummings would hit the go-ahead shot with less than a minute left. He would have 16 and 11 in Game 6, as the Bucks would force a Game 7, and although they kept it close, Boston would outlast Milwaukee to win by 6 and take the series, as Cummings finished with 17 points, and his regular season had seen him average about 21 points, 8.5 rebounds, and 1.5 steals per game. After the season, Nelson resigned as head coach, and the Bucks brought in Del Harris to replace him. Milwaukee looked virtually the same, but again dealt with the absence of key players, as knee issues limited Moncrief to just 56 games, and he was no longer the player he once was. Additionally, Pierce would miss 45 games due to a contract holdout, so the Bucks were rarely at full strength, but they still had Cummings and his usual consistency, as he would again lead the team in scoring and finish second in rebounding. He would hit double figures in 74 games and record 17 double-doubles. But understandably, the Bucks would take a step back, as they were one of the lower scoring teams in the league, leading to a 42-40 finish. But it would still be enough for the 5 seed and a first-round matchup with Atlanta. Cummings would have one of his greatest playoff series, averaging over 28 points per game on extremely efficient shooting. The Hawks would take the first 2 games as Cummings had played solid, but the next 2 games would see him average 30 points and 8.5 rebounds on nearly 56% shooting, as Milwaukee evened the series. He would then be lights out in Game 5, with 28 points on 11 of 16 shooting. But a 33-point performance from Dominique Wilkins would propel Atlanta to a win, ending Milwaukee's season, as Cummings' year had seen him average about 21.5 points, 7.5 rebounds, and a steal per game. The Bucks continued on with essentially the same core in '89 and got a full season out of Pierce. Cummings would again be the team's top scorer on his highest average since his first season in Milwaukee, while also leading the team in rebounding. Cummings would hit double figures in all 80 games he appeared in, including 14 with at least 30 and 21 double-doubles. The Bucks were playing some good basketball, as by All-Star break they were 30-15 and were sending one of their own, as Cummings would receive his second All-Star selection of his career and record 10 points in the game. And by season's end, Cummings had also been named 3rd team All-NBA, and the Bucks had a 49-33 record, which was enough to get them a first-round matchup with Atlanta. The series would again go the distance, but this time the Bucks would win it. Cummings would struggle in a Game 1 loss as he shot just 6 of 21 from the field for 18 points. Game 2 would be much better, as he finished with 22 points and 8 rebounds on 9 of 16 shooting, as the Bucks evened the series. Cummings would have 18-14 in a close Game 3 win, as the Bucks went up 2-1, but early in Game 4, Cummings would suffer a severely sprained ankle, as the Bucks lost the game and Cummings, but then took the series in Game 5, setting up a second-round matchup with Detroit. Yet they would be without Cummings for the first 3 games, as they fell behind 3-0. Cummings would come back for Game 4, but he was far from 100%, playing just 17 minutes and scoring 4 points as the Bucks were swept, with Cummings' season seeing him average about 23 points, 8 rebounds, and 1.5 steals per game. But a big change was on the horizon, and initially, Cummings wasn't happy about it. A couple weeks after their loss to Detroit, Cummings was sent to San Antonio for a package headlined by guard Alvin Robertson. But Cummings was blindsided by the trade and the way he found out, as he was told by coach Del Harris that he had been traded after it had already went through. But from the Spurs' perspective, they were getting a hard-working, no-nonsense guy who had been one of the most consistent players in the league throughout his career. And Cummings was also very religious, much like the Spurs' incoming rookie, who they had drafted a couple years earlier in Navy's David Robinson. So Cummings seemed like the perfect mentor for the young big man. The Spurs featured Robinson and Cummings as their stars, but also had another less heralded rookie in Arizona's Sean Elliott, who would play alongside second-year Willie Anderson. Additionally, the team had also made a trade with Philly in the offseason to bring in veteran point guard Maurice Cheeks. But a late February trade would see the Spurs swap Cheeks for the much younger Rod Strickland, as a still 28-year-old Cummings would become an elder statesman on the team. Robinson would steal the show with one of the greatest rookie seasons of all time, leading to him being voted Rookie of the Year and an All-Star. But this overshadowed another great season from Cummings, as he would finish second on the team to Robinson in both scoring and rebounding, turning in his final 20-plus point per game campaign. Overall, Cummings would appear in 81 games, hitting double figures in 77 of them, and recording 27 double-doubles. And this season would include the most prolific scoring game of his career, when he went for 52 points on nearly 60% shooting along with 11 rebounds, in a January 31st blowout of the Hornets. And the new-look Spurs were a force, as they would complete the largest single-season turnaround in NBA history up to that point, going from 21 wins in '89 to 56 wins this year. And they were hot to end the regular season, winning their final 7 games and drawing the Nuggets in round 1. This would be an easy sweep for San Antonio, as the team shot nearly 53%, and Cummings was one of 3 players to average at least 22 points, and he would also average 11 rebounds, with his best performance coming in the closeout Game 3, when he had a game-high 28 along with 14 rebounds. The second round was a hard series with Portland, yet Cummings would excel, as he would lead all scorers in the series and shoot over 52%. He started with just 17 points in a Game 1 loss, but came back with a game-high 33 points on over 71% shooting in Game 2. Yet the Spurs fell behind 0-2, After a 19-point performance in a Game 3 win, Cummings was the catalyst in evening the series, as he would drop 35 points with 11 rebounds on over 61% shooting in Game 4. He followed that up with 32 and 11 in a Game 5 loss, then had a modest 18 points on poor shooting in Game 6. Yet the Spurs won to force a Game 7. Cummings would ultimately finish with 22 and 10 in what was a close game, as it would even need overtime to be decided. But unfortunately, a head-scratching play from Strickland, which resulted in a turnover and subsequent foul, led to the Blazers icing the game and sending the Spurs packing, as Cummings' first year in San Antonio had ended with him averaging about 22.5 points, 8.5 rebounds, and 1.5 steals per game. With more time to gel, the Spurs had high expectations going into the 91 season, but they would deal with injuries. Cummings himself would miss 15 games, but Strickland would only appear in 58 games, with a big chunk of those absences coming from a broken hand suffered in a fight in February. Cummings would still be the team's second leading scorer and rebounder, but had seen his scoring take a significant hit. However, a point guard like Strickland was great at spreading the ball around, leading to more players getting involved, and Sean Elliott had made a huge jump in year 2. Cummings would start the season with back-to-back 31-point games, and overall would hit double figures in 63 games and record 14 double-doubles. The Spurs would have a top 10 scoring offense and defense, and would do a lot more winning than losing, nearly matching last year's win total by going 55 and 27, securing them as the 2 seed and getting them a first-round matchup with Golden State. Cummings would have a rough Game 1, finishing with 9 points on 3 of 10 shooting, but still pulling down 12 rebounds in a win. Game 2 would be much better, as he'd finish with 26 and 12 on 55% shooting. Yet San Antonio would lose. Game 3 would see him put up a modest 13 and 9 in another loss, and then he'd have just 11 points in Game 4, as the Spurs lost again to shockingly lose the series. But Cummings' regular season had seen him average about 17.5 points, 8 rebounds, and a steal per game. 1992 would be an injury-filled season for San Antonio, and they would deal with coaching change, as after a 21-17 start, head coach Larry Brown was fired and replaced with Bob Bass. The Spurs had added big man Antoine Carr through a trade with Sacramento, but were without Strickland for the first 24 games of the season due to a contract holdout. Cummings was doing his usual work, as he would again finish second on the team in scoring and rebounding, as he would hit double figures in 59 games and record 27 double-doubles. And he would even be named team captain in January. The Spurs were surviving even with a lot of their players missing time, but then a thumb injury would sideline eventual Defensive Player of the Year David Robinson for the final 14 games of the season. And although San Antonio would go just 5 and 9 in those games, a big reason for them winning any was the play of Cummings, as he would put up all-star numbers to end the year. The Spurs would only finish with a 47 and 35 record, but this would be enough for a playoff matchup with Phoenix. However, they would be without Robinson and Anderson, and Strickland would only play in 2 games. So Cummings was option 1 and would play incredible, as he averaged about 26 and 11 on over 51% shooting. He had at least 30 in the first 2 games and recorded double-doubles in every game, but the beat-up Spurs would be swept by Phoenix, ending their year. Yet for the regular season, Cummings averaged about 17.5 points, 9 rebounds, and a steal per game. But this summer would turn out to be career-altering for Cummings. In early July, Cummings would injure his knee in a pickup game, but this was a serious injury, as he would tear multiple knee ligaments, including his ACL, as it was thought he would miss the entire season. San Antonio had lost Strickland in free agency, but had acquired sharpshooter Dale Ellis via trade. Additionally, they would go through 3 coaches this year, but with a healthy team outside of Cummings, they would still manage a 49 and 33 record, and to a lot of people's surprise, Cummings would actually return for the final 8 games of the year, coming off the bench and playing low minutes, as the Spurs went 4-4 with Cummings in the lineup, and entered the playoffs with a matchup with Portland. Cummings wouldn't play huge minutes, but he made an impact early, as late in Game 1, he would convert a tip-in to bring the Spurs within 1, as they would eventually win the game. Game 2 was his best with 15 points and 7 rebounds in 26 minutes of action, yet the Spurs lost. The next 2 games would see Cummings score a combined 10 points, but San Antonio won both to advance to a second-round matchup with Phoenix. The Suns would take the first 2 games before Game 3 saw Cummings put up 12 points and 6 boards in a win, which would be his only game in double figures, as the Suns would win the series in 6, with Cummings' brief regular season seeing him average about 3.5 points, 2.5 rebounds, and half an assist per game. Unfortunately for Cummings, he would never be able to recapture his pre-injury form. Shortly before the beginning of the '94 season, the Spurs made a big move as they packaged fan favorite Sean Elliott to the Pistons for their unpredictable defensive ace Dennis Rodman in an attempt to fill the starting power forward position that Cummings no longer occupied. Cummings would only play in 59 games this year at about 19 minutes per game, after averaging over 34 minutes across the first decade of his career, as in those games he would hit double figures 17 times and record 2 double-doubles. The Spurs got off to a worse than expected 15-9 start when head coach John Lucas decided to reinsert Cummings into the starting lineup in place of Rodman, and from December 21st to February 15th, Cummings gave the Spurs solid production in about 25 minutes a night, with San Antonio going 21-5, which included them winning 10 games of a 13-game win streak before Cummings would miss a month of action and never regain his starting role. But all in all, the Spurs went 55-27, which got them a first-round matchup with Utah, and Cummings came out on fire. In a Game 1 victory, Cummings would come off the bench to score 18 points on 8 of 11 shooting, while also pulling down 10 rebounds, and recording 3 steals in about 19 minutes of action, as the Spurs took Game 1. But after that, Cummings and the Spurs faltered. A Game 2 loss saw Cummings go for 8 points on 1 of 5 shooting. Then in Game 3, he would start in place of a suspended Rodman. And although he would pull down 11 rebounds, he had just 6 points in an embarrassing 32-point loss. Then Utah would close out the series in Game 4, as Cummings went scoreless in about 8 minutes of action. But for the regular season, Cummings would average about 7.5 points, 5 rebounds, and half a steal per game. The '95 season would see Rodman miss 33 games due to suspension and injury, but that didn't stop the Spurs from dominating the regular season. San Antonio would add veteran shooter Chuck Person and got a great year from guard Avery Johnson, but Robinson stole the show as he won league MVP. Cummings would quietly have a healthy year, appearing in 76 games and starting 20 of them, as he would hit double figures in 22 games and record 7 double-doubles. The Spurs were a force, and they really came on near the end of the season, going 20-2 in their final 22 games, which included a 15-game win streak, as they finished with a league-best 62-20 record and got a first-round matchup with Denver. This would be an easy 3-game sweep for San Antonio, as Cummings had minimal contributions, averaging less than 5 points per game. The second round brought the Lakers, in what would be a harder series for San Antonio, as the Lakers pushed them to 6 games. Cummings would start 2 games, but again had a small role, averaging 3 points. The conference finals brought the defending champion Houston Rockets, who would defeat San Antonio in 6, in a series that is best known for Hakeem Olajuwon's dismantling of David Robinson. Cummings would again get little playing time, averaging about 6 minutes per game. However, he would have his best game of the postseason in a Game 5 blowout loss, when he had 12 points on 4 of 5 shooting and 4 rebounds in about 9 minutes. But for the regular season, Cummings averaged about 7 points, 5 rebounds, and half a steal per game. But Cummings would be a free agent after the season, and the Spurs wouldn't be bringing him back. The day before the start of the '96 season, Cummings would return to the Milwaukee Bucks, as although this wasn't the TC Bucks fans remembered, he was still a hard worker who would give his all to the team. After missing the first game, he would play in the remaining 81, even starting 13 of them, as the 6th man of a Bucks team led by their young duo of Vin Baker and Glenn Robinson. Cummings would still hit double figures in 27 games and record 5 double-doubles, with his best game coming in a March 2nd win over Atlanta, when he scored 24 points on 9 of 14 shooting while pulling down 6 rebounds. But for the first time since 1984, Cummings wouldn't be making a postseason appearance, as the Bucks finished with a 25-57 record. And for the regular season, Cummings averaged about 8 points, 5.5 rebounds, and half a steal per game. But he would not be re-signed by Milwaukee, and he would be without a team until early January. On January 13th, Cummings would sign with the Seattle Supersonics for the remainder of the season. The Gary Payton and Sean Kemp-led Sonics were looking to make a return to the finals, as they sat at 26-11 at the time of the signing, and Cummings would give them good minutes off the bench. He would appear in 45 games, getting about 18.5 minutes per game, as he would have 20 games in double figures, but would fail to record a double-double. And the addition of Cummings helped the Sonics go 31-14 over the rest of the season to finish with a 57-25 record, and get a first-round matchup with Phoenix. Phoenix would push the series to 5 games, but Seattle would come out on top with a big win in Game 5. Cummings played solid as he received about 23 minutes per game in a starting role and shot over 53%, which included 2 games in double figures, as the Sonics moved on to a matchup with Houston. This series would also go the distance, and although Cummings returned to his bench role, he still would get over 25 minutes a night and responded as Seattle's best scorer off the bench and second best rebounder behind Kemp. However, the Sonics would lose in 7 to end their season, as Cummings' time in Seattle had seen him average about 8 points, 4 rebounds, and half a steal per game. Although Cummings would not re-sign with Seattle, his great play would get him a contract with the Sixers for the '98 season. But his time there would be brief, as after appearing in a forgettable 44 games, he would be included in a trade to New York around the trade deadline. The Knicks were 29-22 at the time of the trade, but had lost Patrick Ewing to a wrist injury in late December. Cummings would have much more success with New York, appearing in 30 of their final 33 games and significantly upping his numbers, as the Knicks without Ewing would still manage a 43-39 record, which would get them a first-round matchup with Miami. Cummings would see a decreased role, as he would only appear in 4 of the 5 games of their first-round series win, scoring a combined 11 points. Round 2 would bring the Pacers, and Cummings came out hot, as in less than 24 minutes off the bench, he would put up 13 points and 7 rebounds in a Game 1 loss. And although the Knicks won Game 3, this would be their only win, as they were defeated in 5, as Cummings would score a combined 8 points the rest of the series and didn't see the court in Game 5. But his overall season had seen him average about 6.5 points, 4 rebounds, and half a steal per game. It would be another new team for Cummings going into the lockout-shortened '99 season, as Cummings was included in the trade that saw New York acquire Latrell Sprewell. So a 37-year-old Cummings was joining a Warriors team in transition, featuring rookie forward Antoine Jamison. Cummings would continue in his backup role and would appear in all 50 games this season, as he would hit double figures in 21 of them and record 4 double-doubles. But after trading away their best player, the Warriors would feature one of the league's worst offenses and in turn would finish at 21-29 and miss the playoffs, as Cummings' season had seen him average about 9 points, 5 rebounds, and a steal per game. Cummings would be marred by shoulder and groin injuries throughout the 2000 season, as he would only appear in 22 games and played his final game of the season on January 25th. However, he was productive for a Warriors team who were at the bottom of the league, finishing with a 19-63 record, as Cummings' 18th season had seen him average about 8.5 points, 5 rebounds, and half a steal per game. In early October, a now 39-year-old Cummings would announce his retirement and transition to a career in music, releasing multiple albums post-retirement. Terry Cummings as a basketball player was the model of consistency over the first decade of his career, a finesse forward who could take you off the dribble or beat you with the mid-range, yet also had the strength and toughness to battle down low and score in the post. He's one of the most overlooked offensive forces of his era, as over the first decade of his career, he was good for about 21 points and 9 boards a night. You could see he was special from his days at DePaul and with San Diego, but things really took off once he joined the Milwaukee Bucks, giving them a go-to scoring presence to help their already established team in the mid-80s. He was the perfect veteran in San Antonio and took a backseat to David Robinson without issue, quietly going about his usual business until his tragic knee injury. He never came back as the same player, but he gracefully accepted a reserve role and was a valuable bench player on many teams throughout the final 8 years of his career. He's one of the greatest winners who never won it all, as at the time of his retirement, he had played in the most playoff games without making a finals appearance. But that's just how it goes sometimes. And that doesn't take anything away from the player Terry Cummings was, an underappreciated star. But that's it for today's episode on Terry Cummings. Hope you enjoyed it, and make sure to subscribe for more videos like this one. If you liked it, check out this one on his brief San Diego teammate, or this one for the player he was traded for. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.